Good morning / afternoon, contractors. We are live again here on our Tuesday morning trainings just for you. And why do we run these trainings? To give you the information, the tools that you need to make the decisions that are ultimately going to help you create the business that supports the lifestyle that you want. Man, that's a mouthful, but I love it. Well, I want to get after it. Let me catch you up a little bit. Last week was an amazing week. Why? I spent 5 days in Mexico with my wife, which is never a bad thing. So we had a really great time. But during this time, I was thinking about contractors, right? And I was thinking about where is it that they're struggling the most right now? And the truth is, it doesn't matter where you are in your business, whether you're in launch mode, doing under 250 a year, whether you're in growth mode, doing 250 to probably 6 or 7 a year, or whether you're in scale mode, doing 750 and above. It doesn't matter which phase of business that you're in, you're going to struggle with the same things, right? You've probably heard the saying, different level, different devil, which is true. It's a different version of the problem, right? It's different size of problem, but the problem remains the same. So we're going to talk about that today, not just the problems, but the problems that eventually, if they don't get taken care of, lead to catastrophic failure, right? Lead to the fact that you probably won't have a contracting business come this time next year. I get it. It's a little scary, but we're going to talk about all these little things. I want to start off with telling you a story though, right? A story. Some of you know this, some of you don't, but back in the day, or I should say my last life, I was a police officer in the Phoenix area. And one of the things that I got to do was work undercover. And during that time, I also got to supervise our undercover squad, right? We called it our organized crime squad. But basically, we were intercepting drug loads coming across the border from Mexico. You got it. 100%. We had trackers on vehicles. We were listening to people's conversations on phones. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. It was a great time. But I'll tell you something. When you get to a certain level, all businesses function the same, whether it's a contracting business, a flower shop, a doctor's office, a mechanic's garage, or in this case, a drug cartel. Why? Because you have to understand the law of supply and demand. As long as there's a demand, there will be a supply. Remember that. Now, one of the things that we would do is we would figure out how is it that we stop this flow of drugs coming across the border, right? So we would identify a low-level target, and as we would say, we would work our way up to where we got to now people who are in Mexico who are calling the shots, if you will, right? Now, these cartels make billions with a B, billions of dollars. And the reason they do is because they've become really good at what they do, their business model. And so what we discovered after going after a couple of these cartels, we discovered that they were highly organized, right? And they were prepared for what we called worst case scenario. Now, what is a worst case scenario in the drug world? Well, your drugs get intercepted and you get arrested, right? Worst case scenario. Then you're shut down, okay? What's the worst case scenario in the contracting space? Well, you either, one of these areas that we'll talk about here in a second, you either can't generate the leads that you need, you can't close the deals, you can't run the jobs, you can't manage people, you can't manage money, right? One of these areas, you can't control what ends up happening. It will eventually implode your business. Now, how did we find out about this? You're gonna find this really interesting, and then we'll dive into contractors specifically. The way that we found out about this is we would work our case and slowly grow it to a higher and a higher level till we would identify, let's just say, the location where they were funneling their money, right? Their money back to Mexico, and they would use check cashing stores. And so we would identify this place, we would get a warrant, we would hit the place with a warrant, and we would seize anywhere from $250,000 to $1.5 million worth of money inside of this check cashing store, right? And you would think that the people in the check cashing store would then tell us, hey, who are the couriers, who are the people that you send the money to, and all this good stuff. Then we could take out the whole organization. Well, the cartels are really smart. And so what they did is they created these silos, right? Silos for the people bringing the drugs into the country, silos for the people handling the money, and then silos for the people that are coordinating the whole thing back in Mexico, right? And so we would always only get a portion of the company, the business, the cartel, and never the whole thing. Now, you're probably like, man, I should be in the cartel because I could be funneling billions of dollars. No, you shouldn't. What I want you to pay attention, though, is the business model, right? They were planning for worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, the police raid one of their operations. But because of the way they set up their business, it wouldn't actually take them down. Would it slow them down? Yes, absolutely. But it wouldn't actually take them down. Now, what does that have to do with being a contractor, right? There's a reason that most contractors fail. Now, what do I mean by most contractors? If you're curious what the numbers are, let me zoom in a little bit here. The numbers are really, I don't know what the right word is. Shocking is the right word, right? 90, whoops. One of these days I'll figure out how to use this iPad properly. Okay, why do most of them fail? Okay. 90% of businesses, of contractors, will be out of business within the first 5 years. Now think about this. You may be here more than 5 years. Congratulations. You've beaten a certain percentage of the odds, right? 90% within 5 years are out of business. Where do they go? Well, they usually go to work for somebody else, or they try another trade, but the truth is they are not in business anymore, okay? Only 4% ever cross 7 figures. Now, what is 7 figures? For those of you that don't know, that's $1 million a year. 4%. That's it. 4%, right? So the odds are not in your favor, but I'm not here to talk about the odds. I'm here to talk about why. Why is it that 90% of contracting businesses are out of business within the first 5 years? Why is it that only 4% cross 7 figures? And it's going to fall into one of these topics. Okay, the first one and the biggest one, thank you, Uncle Sam, we all love you, is your finances. Now, what are we talking about when we say finances? Well, we're talking about a couple different things. The first thing that we're talking about is your managing of your money. Most contractors, if today I said, hey, pull up your P&L, they would think that it was some kind of doctor's exam and say, no, I don't have a disease, right? But a P&L is a profit and loss statement. And if you're doing your numbers right, either internally or you have an accounting company or whatnot, you should be able to pull up a P&L like this, right? You should know whether you're currently making money or not. Most contractors don't understand something called job costing. What is job costing? Job costing is making sure that every job that you go into is set up to make you money. Did you hear that? Just because you say, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, or Mr. or Mrs. Builder, or Mr. or Mrs. Whoever, we're going to do this job and we're going to charge you $40,000. And at the end of the job, or through whatever payment schedule you have, they give you $40,000. Doesn't mean that you actually made money. Because what most contractors fail to do is understand their finances, okay? Now, what about finances do they need to understand? The first thing they need to understand is what we call our overhead. How much does it cost to keep the lights on? You have vehicles, you have employees, you have insurance, you have equipment. Some of you have offices, right? These are your overhead. Or we also call them your fixed expenses, okay? You should know what your fixed expenses are. Now, what's the easiest way to do this? Super easy way, ready? You should know over a year, this is how much I pay in fixed expenses, right? So whether it's your electric, your cell phone, your vehicle, your employees, so on and so forth, you should have a number over the year, right? If you divide that number by 12, that gives you a monthly number, right? Fixed expenses. How much is this costing me, right? This business. And it's just to keep the lights on. Now, if you want to get super crazy, you can divide it by 365, and that tells you per day what your fixed expenses are. What does that allow you to do? It allows you now to bid jobs in a way that you make sure that you're making money. You should have a timeline. You should know how long it's going to take. You should know how many people it's going to take. Again, you should know how much it's going to cost you, okay? So you have your fixed expenses, right? Then you have your variable expenses, okay? This is stuff like your material, right? Your supplies, the things that you can't really control. And between these two, you should have a really good number, a really good idea of whether you're making money or not. Now, why is it that most contractors fail? Because in their heads, in their mind, they're counting dollars and cents, and they think that they know that they're making money. But the truth is they're not. They're losing money. And so eventually you're going to get to a point where, oh, hey, there's no more money in the bank. And you're going to do one of two things. You're going to dump more money into it, either from your savings account or from a loan from a bank, or you're just going to shut the doors, right? So the biggest reason that most contractors fail is finances. Now, what is it that you need to do about it? Again, get control of your finances. Start to learn your numbers. If you're not a numbers person like me, hire someone who is. And I don't mean an employee necessarily. It could be an accounting firm, right? But the point is you need somebody to help keep you accountable to the thing that will keep you in business or not. Now, if you're watching this either live or on replay, go ahead and type live or replay in the comments down below. If finances is something that you struggle with, go ahead and type finances. And it's okay. I want you to be aware of this because if you're aware of it, you can do something about it. All right? So the second thing then that contractors struggle with, okay, and the reason that they never succeed and eventually close the doors is this. Now, this is not the movie theater. That's not what we're talking about when we say audience. What we're talking about is the people that you work with, okay? When contractors get to the point of make it or break it, and I've dealt with hundreds of these contractors, the first question I ask them is about their finances. And that solves, or doesn't solve, but it addresses most of the issues. The second thing, though, is their audience. Now, what do I mean by audience? That I mean who it is that you do business with. Now, if you're an electrician, guess what? You can work in one of three areas. You can be a service work electrician. You go to people's houses and you help them fix their electrical problems. You can do commercial, right? Or you can do residential on a large scale, right? New build, so on and so forth. If you're a plumber, it's the same three categories. If you're a roofer, it's commercial or residential, right? So there's different places that you can focus your time, energy, and attention. Some contractors have figured it out and they have multiple audiences. But for you, I want you to think of one. Who is your main audience? And inside of that, if you can't identify who they are, you will never be able to identify what problem you're solving for them, and you will never be able to become the expert in that field. Now, one of the things that we teach contractors to do is what we call guerrilla marketing. Sounds kind of cool, actually not that complicated, but it works. Now, what is guerrilla marketing? Well, what we do is we get groups of contractors together in an area. So say you live in the Twin Cities, or you live in Jacksonville, Florida, or you live in Los Angeles. What you can do is go out into these Facebook groups and find other contractors. Start to build relationships with them, right? So if you do exterior work, you're a roofer, you should be building relationships with gutter people, with painters, with window installers, with landscapers, all of the people who touch the exterior of your house. Why? Because when you find the right people, what this guerrilla marketing group allows you to do is somebody in a group says, hey, I need a roofer. You can say, hi, I'm a roofer, but you and the 300 other people in the group are going to say the exact same thing. But if you have 5 to 10 other contractors in the group who aren't part of your trade, but know you and know the kind of work that you do, guess what? They are going to recommend you. And so if you're the person that put the post on there to begin with, what's the likelihood of you wanting to reach out to the person who is being referred multiple times in a post? Guerrilla marketing, right? But again, you have to be an expert in a certain thing. I only have plumbers that say, hey, I'm a service guy. Okay, cool. So anybody who asks for service work, we're sending your way. Or I'm a new build residential, or I'm a new build commercial, right? But it allows you to segment who you work with, what problem your audience is experiencing, and then you ultimately become the expert in it. Fair? Okay, so we've got 2 so far, finances and audience. So what is the third thing that is going to make sure that you ultimately will fail? Right? And then we're going to talk about how to prevent it. So the third thing that we're looking at, so first we have your finances, second we have your audience, and the third thing that we're looking at is your ability, I guess it would help if I spelled things correctly. Don't worry, Mom, I'll figure this out. Your ability to run a job, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, you're a contractor. You run jobs. How is it then that you run a job? Does everything run through you? Do you have a team? Do you have subs? Are you using any kind of project management software? Most contractors answer yes to the first question. It all runs through me. Which is good. If you're small, you can control everything. But you will never grow a business. You will burn out before it happens. You will never grow a business that is self-sustainable if everything runs through you, right? So now we look at running a team, which we'll get into later. So how do you run a team, right? Do your people know what to do, when and how to do it? If they don't, guess what? It's all going to flow through you anyway. So why do you have a team? Subs, same thing. I have a very clear subcontractor agreement. They understand what is expected of them on every job. Before every job, they show me that they're current with their insurance and their workman's comp. They gave me their bid and their estimate written. Okay, we have a very clear way of paying them and making sure that they get paid, but they have to complete the job to our standards before they get paid. Right? All this stuff is clear and lined out. So we have a very simple way for us to manage our projects. Do you? And why do most contractors fail? Because they say they start to grow, they figure out whoever their audience is, right? And they have 6 jobs running at the same time. The problem is that there are things that are falling through the holes and gaps, right? It might be a shower door that they didn't get installed. It might be the stairs that were supposed to be carpeted, but instead they put LVP on there. It might be a certain paint color that was supposed to be in the kitchen and not the bathroom, but they got reversed, right? Again, costing them time and money. So how is it right now that you're running your job? Are you running it in a way that allows you to grow? Are you running it in a way that is forcing you to hold on for dear life? HODL, we call it. Again, the first thing that is going to sink your contracting business, finances. The second thing, audience. The third thing, run a job. Okay. The fourth thing, then, let me put this in here. The fourth thing is people. Now, we could sit here and talk about people for days because they are the foundation of everything that you do inside of your business. And I include you. You're a person. Congratulations. Now, why is it that most contractors fail? Because they never learn to manage people. Okay? There's no clear expectation. There's no clear accountability. There's no clear communication. And there's no clear path. And inside a path, I'll put training. Okay? So what do I mean by this? When you hire somebody, you need to hire them with an expectation, right? Not a warm body. Stop hiring warm bodies. What you need is somebody that you can hire, that you can bring on board, that you can then turn around and say, okay, John, I hired you to make sure that my job sites are clean. So your job is to make sure that my job site is clean. Here's how. And you explain to them and show them how to do it, right? Or you hire somebody to be a project manager, or you hire somebody to do your books. Whatever the thing is, they are your people. They are your responsibility. And an employee mindset is not the same as an owner mindset. Different conversation for you, but you need to understand people need to be, one, educated, employees I should say. They need to be educated, okay? They need to be told what to do and be held accountable to that. And then they need to be rewarded, okay? Those three things. So we're looking at what's the expectation. The second thing is the accountability that we just talked about. I may have hired John to clean the job site, but who's making sure that John is actually doing the thing that I'm paying him to do? I can't just turn my back and expect him to do it, because what's the likelihood of him actually doing it? You've played this game before, and you end up redoing it. So how are you holding people accountable to what you expect them to do? The third thing is communication, right? There's old Jackie Chan movie, Rush Hour, if you guys remember that movie, Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. Hilarious movie. And so Jackie Chan, if you're not familiar with him, he's from Hong Kong, and Chris Tucker, he's from LA, right? Jackie Chan is Asian, Chris Tucker is black. Now, they're communicating, right? But they're attempting to communicate, but two different languages, two different ways to communicate. And there's a certain scene where they're getting frustrated with their communication level. And during the scene, Jackie Chan gets pissed and he's like, don't you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? And he says that to Chris Tucker. And Chris Tucker responds with, man, ain't nobody understand the words coming out of your mouth, right? And it's a funny scene because Jackie Chan at times, when he's speaking in English, is very difficult to understand. It's the same thing when it comes to you and your employees or you and your subs. It's the communication. When I was working as a police officer, we would have a briefing before we ran any type of operation, whether we were buying drugs, buying stolen cars, buying guns, arresting somebody for a warrant, whether we were executing a search warrant, whatever the thing was, we would have a briefing. And what did we do in the briefing? Clear expectations. What are we doing and how are we doing it? Clarity around accountability. Who is it that is doing what, right? And then we would have at the end of it, a brief back. This is where communication comes into play. A brief back, which meant that, say there's 5 people in the room and every one of the 5 people has a different role. I would then say, okay, John, what are you expected to do? Susie, what are you expected to do? Mark, what are you expected to do? Tyler, what are you expected to do? And they would explain it to me back of what the expectation was. What does that allow you to do? It allows you to make sure that the people on your team understand clearly what you expect out of them. Fair? And the last piece is the path. Now, we'll talk more about employees. I love talking about employees. But at the end of the day, you have to realize this. Employees are working for a reason, and they're not working for you. Yeah, I just said that. Hold on, I'm going to let it sink in a second. They're not working for you. They're working for themselves. So what are you doing to help them get what they want out of their business? What is it that they want? I don't know. Is it they want more money? Is it that they want the financial security? Is it they want the job satisfaction? Is it that they want to take their family on a trip to Europe for a month? Like, what is the thing? If you don't communicate, as we talked about before, you'll never understand that, okay? And then what will end up happening is you'll have disgruntled employees. And that's where the revolving door of I hire one, I fire the next, and it just keeps going. Why? Because you don't know what they ultimately want. What you want to hire is people who have a clear expectation of what they want. Hey, eventually, I want to run jobs on my own. Cool. Hey, eventually, I want to be the chief operating officer of this thing. Awesome. Hey, eventually, I want to take the tool belt off and I want to supervise a job site. Great. You can build a path and you can build training to get them to that level. Because guess what? The more you help them get what they want, the more they will help you get what you want. Sound fair? All right. So we talked about these 4 things, and there's a lot more that we can talk about, but these are the big 4, right? I'm going to go over them again. What is it for those of you jumping on late. What is it that causes contractors to fail? 90% of contractors, again, within the first 5 years, close the doors. 4% ever cross 7 figures, okay? But how is it that we create a multi-7-figure, 8-figure business? The first thing that will keep you from doing that, or if you're doing it right, help you get there, is your finances. Okay, we talked about making sure you understand your numbers, making sure that if it's not you, you have somebody on your team that does, but you should have a clear understanding of whether you're going to make money on a job or not before you sign the contract. The second thing is your audience. Who is it that you are ultimately working with? What problem do they experience, and how do you become the expert in that? Okay, if you can do those 3 things, 100% you'll be successful. The third thing is how you're running your jobs. Because remember, after you sign the contract, you got to do the thing that you said you're going to do. So how do you do that? Okay, does it run through you, a team, subs, project management? How are you doing this? And if you're not doing this, you should probably start doing this. Okay, and the fourth thing is your people. What are the expectations that you have for them? How are you holding them accountable? How are you making sure that communication is clear? And what's the path that you're giving them to grow into the position or to the place that they want to grow into? Now, remember this, okay? Most contractors will still fail because most contractors will not do what they know they need to do. Are you a most contractor, or are you some of the select few? Only you can decide. So again, if you're watching this thing live, type live down below, smash the like, the heart, share this thing. We want to get this out to the world. Last thing, before we wrap up, we are going to be making an announcement here in the next couple days, but I'll let you guys know a little earlier. We're running a live conference in January called American Contractor Live. Salt Lake City, 500 contractors, experts in the room. If you're serious about growing your business, you're going to want to be there. 7- and 8-figure contractors, mindset experts. We're going to have people from across the country come in, and they're all going to want the same thing, and that is, how do I create a business that supports the lifestyle that I want? And we want to see you there. So stay tuned for the announcement. Grab your ticket, and we're going to have a special Black Friday discount just for you guys. But I appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you guys sharing, and I appreciate you guys being willing to grow your business. But now it's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.